As realtors, we help our clients with all sorts of matters, including how to find available resources that may assist with their down payment. We are proud to announce that Down Payment Resource is now available on HAR.com. This will allow consumers to find out if they meet the criteria of any of the 70 different assistance programs available in the greater Houston region. Some programs are income-based, but many allow higher incomes than you might think. There are also programs specific for people in certain professions such as police officers, firefighters, teachers, healthcare workers, and others. About 89% of all listings for sale in the Houston region qualify for some sort of down payment assistance. To find out more, you may visit www.har.com/downpayment and work with your realtor to make sure you have everything you need to be able to purchase the home of your dreams.
Good afternoon and welcome to HAR Community Conversations. We are here the first or second Thursday of each month at 12 noon to have meaningful conversations about topics that matter most to Houstonians. And today we are joined by Gerald Klassen. He is a data research scientist for the Real Estate Center at Texas A&M University. Welcome to the program, Gerald.
Thank you, Christina. It's good to see you again.
It is very good to see you, and we are talking about a very hot topic today. Everybody wants to know what's going on with the market, what's next, interest rates, what can we expect this year? And you've got some great information to share with us. But before we get into all of that and share that with our audience, Gerald, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
Okay, as you mentioned, I'm the data scientist at the center. And my job is to lead the development of the reporting and data analytics we do for MLS data and for residential reporting in the state of Texas. So a lot of the statistics, all the statistics that we provide to realtors and to the public through our website comes through the data warehouse that I'm developing. And prior to that, I was working at Wachovia Bank in a unit called Wachovia Global Securities Lending, where I got to see the rise and fall of private label mortgage-backed securities. And so I've seen it from the real estate market from different angles, from the data side and from the finance side, and I look forward to sharing that with your audience today.
Thank you so much. And you are in constant contact with us here at HAR, helping us as we prepare data and reports weekly for our members and for consumers. So we thank you for that and working with us.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. So let's dive right into it and talk about interest rates, because some people have referred to the interest rates we're seeing as high interest rates, even historically high interest rates. But what are your thoughts on the rise in interest rates that we've seen, and how have they impacted the Houston real estate market?
Okay, so now we have the reality check that really mortgage rates are just back to where they are normal. And I think you have a slide there to put up for the folks. But really all that's happened is the mortgage rates have returned to what I would call the last time the market was normal in about 2001, late 2000, early 2001, at a little over 6.5%. And you can see over the long term, it's kind of hovered around. And really what we've experienced is historically low interest rates through Fed's quantitative easing through the purchase of mortgage-backed securities. And so really, with the Fed exiting the market, we're just back to normal now. And I think there's a lot of folks, about 15 years of buyers that are not used to normal. They're used to abnormal, historically low. And so when I was getting ready for this presentation, I did a little bit of a study in the Houston market. And I divided up all the zip codes into 10 deciles, different areas, and held them constant from 2019 to 2021 during the boom, and then from 21 to 23, which is the big slowdown. And it's quite interesting what I found. During the boom time, proportionately more buyers went shopping for homes in areas of higher value. And it kind of makes sense because with the lower mortgage rate and more purchasing power, folks went shopping in the steak aisle instead of the hamburger aisle. And so they went shopping where there were more expensive homes. And the areas with lower priced homes had increased traffic, but not quite as much of an increase. And as far as the pricing, the lower priced areas actually had a greater percentage increase in values during the boom from 2019 to 2021, bigger percentage increase than the higher priced areas. So that was great for those households. They had bigger increases in wealth on a percentage basis. But the shoppers in the more expensive areas, as we kind of heard anecdotally, had to pay up closer to the asking price than folks shopping in the lower priced areas where they got a little bit more of a discount relative to the asking price. So that was during the boom. When mortgage rates went up and things started slowing down, well, that changed the market. There were proportionately fewer buyers buying in the more expensive areas, which makes sense. When the budget got constricted, they went shopping in lower priced areas. So that was great for homes for sale in lower priced areas. There was proportionally more demand. And price appreciation was actually the strongest at the very lowest, in the lowest cost areas and in the highest cost areas. So that was good for both of them. And with this slowdown, really sellers across all of the areas have been taking about an equal amount of haircut on what they're getting on the sale price compared to what they were originally asking. So that's pretty much hit all value areas equally, except for the very most expensive areas. For some reason, those prices are holding up closer, and people are having to bid closer to what the asking price is. So it's the changes in interest rates have created different impacts in the higher and lower areas of town. So
yeah, well, that's really interesting to think about. And for home sellers or potential home sellers that are tuned into this program, when they're discussing with their realtor pricing, that's something to consider if they're wavering between two price groups. Thank you for sharing that information. So what do you anticipate for the Houston housing market for the rest of 2024?
The market has really, I think, settled into a pretty stable trading range. As you mentioned, I watch it, particularly Houston, on a weekly basis. And for the last few months, there hasn't been any real significant, changes either up or down. The thing that I've really noticed picking up, and it's not just in Houston, but Houston was probably one of the early places, was the new listings coming into the market, the surge in new listings. And so that's been your best performing statistic in these last few months. And so it seems like there's more product coming into the market. I don't expect for the sales volume to recover significantly for quite a while, just because, as we've heard, about 2/3 of the country are locked into mortgages below 4%, and they're not. So I think from a sales volume perspective, January got off to a good start, but I'm wondering if folks are purchasing in anticipation of a Fed pivot, big reversal to maybe refinance at lower rates, but that's kind of a speculative reason for purchasing. So I'm not quite sure. We'll find out what that's about. And I expect that as the loss in purchasing power of buyers starts to set in, I think that's going to keep a lid on prices. There's been a huge drop in purchasing power of households. And so I think that's going to continue to put pressure on prices, maybe not significant downward, but for certain to keep them, pretty flat in 2024.
Okay. We had a question come in from Ron watching on YouTube. He is asking about the haircut you mentioned. What haircut have prices in Montgomery County changed on average? So what is the reduction on average that you're seeing? And he's asking specifically about Montgomery County.
I would consider Montgomery County to be one of the more expensive zip codes. And so those in that area, a 97 to 98%, closed price relative to the original list. They're actually, in that area are doing quite well. They're not having to give as much of a discount.
Okay, so more of a trim, we would say, maybe in Montgomery County. Very good. So how does Houston's housing market compare to Texas and the rest of the country?
Well, it's very interesting. I took a look at the ratio of median home prices to median household income in 2023. On a national basis, that ratio was 4.4. So the median home price was 4.4 times the median household income. In Texas, that ratio was 4.3. So pretty close to the national. In Harris County, that ratio is about 4.7. And so what that tells me is that, in 2008, Texas and Houston were a lot different than the rest of the country because of lower leverage, lower mortgage levels. But this time, the extreme ratio of home price to household income is about the national level. And so that's cause for concern when you look at the long term, what the long term has been. The two most resilient markets, large markets in Texas, no doubt, have been Houston and Dallas. I've been impressed at how they've managed to hold up. And it makes sense because that's where a lot of the migration is headed towards. And that's where a lot of, I think, federal stimulus money is headed to for investments and business ventures and such. So Dallas and Houston have definitely been the most resilient. In terms of the mid-markets in Texas, Amarillo, Lubbock, and Waco, I've been impressed at how resilient they've been. Bryan College Station has been very resilient up until a few months ago. It started to slow down. And so, but Houston has definitely been performing very well. And there are reasons for that we'll get into.
Okay. So a question that I know a lot of people are asking, as they always do, but especially right now, is now a good time to buy and is now a good time to sell?
Okay, well, if housing is not a speculative investment, right? Let me start off with that. So I hope people aren't speculating on whether they should buy a house or not. A home is a place to live. I think for buyers, so in that respect, looking at home as a place to live, for buyers, how long do you plan to live in the home? Don't think of it as a 3-year, speculative investment. Think about if you plan to live in that home for 5 years, then it makes sense. Go ahead and buy. Until then, really renting is cheaper and more flexible and a better way to go. I'd say, did you find, for buyers, have you found a home in a location that's ideal for you and can't be replicated, right? Real estate, there's only one house built on one lot, and that house may not become available, in 3 or 5 or 7 years, and if it's available today. So did you find that house, that special one of a place? Yeah, go ahead and buy it if it fits your budget. Don't, if you're having to stretch to make a purchase right now for buyers, don't do it. Mm-hmm. If you would feel comfortable with the value of your home dropping maybe 10%, basically buy the house and turn off your social media and unsubscribe from newspapers, because we could be headed for some difficult time. If you can handle a bit of a decline in value, then by all means go ahead and buy. Mm-hmm. For sellers, has the home really become unlivable, or could a good remodel or expansion make it more livable for more years, right? Extend where you are. If so, it might be better to just stay in place and make the nest more attractive. For sellers, do you have a better place in mind to move to? If it's optional and nobody's making you, do you really have a better place to go to? And what's the minimum price you'd be willing to accept right now? Mm-hmm. You get it on the market now, and as we discovered in early 2008, the market changes in a hurry. And so what minimum price would you be willing to accept, and is that acceptable? So, and how many days could you live with, for taking to sell the home? Can you wait that long? So those would be the questions that I would ask, or things I would ask buyers and sellers to consider when they're thinking about, is this the time to pull the trigger on a transaction?
Excellent. What about specific to first-time home buyers? What is your advice for first-time home buyers?
Well, I think now is the time for first-time home buyers to start shopping, and there's an interesting reason why. I think there may be an opportunity coming here in the near term for some of those homes that got gobbled up into single-family rentals to come back onto the market as single-family landlords get into a little bit of financial trouble. Especially some of the weaker ones. It's no secret. Just drive around town and look at all the multifamily, nice, new, shiny, Class A multifamily properties that are hitting the market and pushing down rents on apartments. Well, I think what you're going to see, and I've talked to to some folks who seem to agree that there are going to be some single-family tenants who want to move back into nice, new, shiny Class A apartments with lots of amenities. And so what I've been seeing in the lease data, at least through the MLS, is more and more discounts on the closed price relative to the original asking price. The landlords are having to drop their prices. Now, I haven't seen that in Houston so much. It's come down to maybe 2019 levels, but in the other major metros, we're talking back down to 2008 levels in terms of that discount. And so it's making me think that first-time buyers, if you can look around and shop for homes that are being leased and check the tax roll for when the owner purchased the property, if they're recent owners, they may be interested in getting out because they're facing lower rents, and they might have trouble making their mortgage. And so they just, and with a lack of price appreciation on the horizon, they just might be willing to exit. So, grab a knowledgeable realtor who knows how to look through the tax roll and hunt down some good rental properties that might come available for purchase. And so that would be my tip for first-time home buyers. You may see a bunch of rental properties, single-family rentals, come back into the market over that.
Excellent. Thank you. A couple questions that came in. Brenda is asking, when is a reasonable time for a second home?
Okay, is this a reasonable time to purchase?
I believe that's what she means.
That
yes.
all depends on is it a stretch financially to do it? I wouldn't buy the home as a speculative investment anticipating the price to increase. I think we're still in the early stages of some financial difficulties that
Mm-hmm.
really going to put a cap on increase in prices. And so if it's a second home for vacation and a place you really want to go and financially it works, um, great, do it, but don't think of it as something you're going to flip in 2 or 3 years for a profit.
Okay.
Think of it as for use. So
Excellent. Another question about Montgomery County coming in. Red was asking, what are your thoughts about the market in the Woodlands? So you mentioned the haircut earlier and the price change there, but what are your thoughts just generally about the Woodlands or Montgomery County area?
So there are a lot of. I read the Houston Business Journal on a daily basis, and I see a lot of announcements of uh, new master plan communities going in up there. And in maybe 12 to 18 months, when a lot of lots start being delivered to market, you could see a lot of supply, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of single family supply coming available in the market. So if you think back to 2020, late 2020, when a lot of multifamily projects were initiated, and here we are, 2.5 years later with a lot of multifamily. The same thing could happen with single family, particularly up there in the Montgomery County area with all those places coming in. So it could be a competitive market for sellers in a few years. But it's an attractive place to live. I love it. It fits in that category of higher value and which is holding up pretty well. The one thing that I'll mention, and this maybe touches on another question that I think that you might want to ask, but one thing I'm concerned about at the higher end of the market is that a lot of the top 10% of households by income have a lot of commercial real estate investments. And while they've benefited in the recent boom in real estate and all the money creation that's gone on and boosted commercial real estate, the one concern I have about areas of high value is that the top 10% of households could be impacted by this trouble in commercial real estate. And I'm wondering if that might have an impact on their willingness to transact in houses and consumer spending and so for areas like that, it'll be interesting to see how it's impacted by what's unfolding in commercial real estate right now.
Okay, thank you for that. You had some great advice for first-time home buyers. Do you have some advice for sellers?
Actually, I do. My advice for sellers is don't hold out for the last dollar. Uh, and so I put some numbers to it. Sat down. I'm a data guy. I like doing some calculations. And the pool of potential purchasers in Houston just encountered a loss of 21.5% of their purchasing power between 2021 and 2023. And that's at a 90% loan to value. So think about it. You're a seller, and your pool of potential buyers just took a haircut of 21.5% on their purchasing power. Don't hold out for the last dollar if you have a buyer who's going to come close to what you're asking. I looked at Texas from the peak, that peak median household price or median price to household income. That ratio peaked at 4.56 in 2022, and it's down to 4.3 in 2023. Then if you go back to 2001, that ratio was 2.91. What that means is if we were to go from 4.3 to 2.91, that would mean a home price decline of about 32%. to get back to that normal ratio of home price to income. Either that or we need a household income increase of about 47%. And if you look at Harris County and that ratio going from where it was in 23 to where it was normal in 2001, that means a home price decline of 41%. Now, I'm not saying that prices are going to decline that much, but I'm just saying if the Fed is really out of the mortgage market and housing is really back to its native form without government interference, we're going to have pressure on prices. So for sellers, don't hold out for that last dollar, because we don't know what if something like this could become reality.
That's great advice. We had a question that came in from Raquel. You mentioned a little bit about commercial. She's asking what's happening in commercial real estate in Houston.
Well, I would say that the fiscal stimulus that has gone into funding a lot of alternative energy projects, Houston has probably been one of the biggest beneficiaries of that. And it's created a lot of funding for commercial real estate projects. And so I think that's been very supportive. All of the fiscal deficit spending for alternative energy infrastructure and those types of projects, I think has been supportive of Houston commercial real estate. So as long as that deficit spending continues, it'll continue to be supportive of commercial real estate. But I know and have been reading, I think everybody can read in the Business Journal about the problems in office. One of the flagship properties is now into default. So that's a problem that isn't going to go away. I think we're in the first inning. And if you look at the amount of refinancings that are scheduled to happen over the next 3 years, this isn't going to be a short-term problem. This is going to be a 2 to 3 year problem, and it gets worse after this year. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the reality is when mortgage debt that was financed in one interest rate environment has to get refinanced in a higher interest rate environment, problems happen. So that's my thoughts on commercial real estate.
Thank you. And we don't think you're the bearer of bad news. We appreciate your honesty.
I'm just trying to bring the facts so people can make educated decisions.
So you've mentioned a few challenges for the real estate market. What do you think are the most significant challenges that Houston is facing?
The multifamily, I think, is going to be a significant issue. Well, office, no question, is the most difficult challenge, the refinancing of office. But I think the multifamily and the cascading impact on single family rentals is going to be a significant challenge. And I don't know how that's going to play out, but the downward pressure that we're seeing on multifamily prices right now, I think is going to translate into single family rental, which is going to cascade. So I really think the office and the multifamily are the two biggest challenges. One thing that I've seen, and Houston has been strong in new listings. And if sales don't pick up and keep pace with new listings, I could see months inventory becoming an issue by the middle of the year to late in the year, which then could possibly put pressure on prices. But it's great that more supply is coming into the market, at least according to new listings. But the hope is that sales would keep up. And I think just the overall credit environment is definitely going to be a challenge, or not just Houston, but for all markets as credit gets tighter for real estate, particularly commercial real estate.
Thank you. And just to touch on that, you mentioned office. Ron is asking with hybrid working situations or work from home situations, do you see a substantial decline with commercial properties?
Well, we have seen substantial decline in other markets. When you look, it's not a great comparison to Houston, but when you look at what's happening in San Francisco, in New York, some of those Jingle mail is back in commercial real estate, right? We saw it in 2007 with residential. It's back in commercial, where the borrowers are handing back buildings and they're being sold at substantial loss. Now, I know that there are other social and cultural issues facing San Francisco and New York that are not facing Houston. So maybe it won't be so bad here, but I don't see the hybrid situation changing that much, especially in the next year or two, that it's going to impact, suddenly save office. And I don't see that it's the Federal Reserve's mandate to lower interest rates or start QE, to save commercial real estate values or to save commercial real estate loans from defaulting. So I don't see a savior for commercial properties at this point, unless it gets to a point where it really starts to threaten viability of the financial system.
Okay, thank you for that. Gerald, you've shared so much great information. I do want to remind everyone that HAR puts out weekly reports each Wednesday. We also put out a report on the first weekday of the month called the Fresh Report, with a snapshot of what happened the previous month. And the second Wednesday of every month, that is when we put out our big release of what happened the previous month in real estate. We also have affordability reports, including one coming out this afternoon. So be on the lookout for those so that you can stay in the know with what's happening in Houston real estate. Another question that came in for you, Gerald, from Jill: in the commercial market, how are industrial prices going to be impacted?
I think a lot of that depends on consumer spending and how that plays out. We're in the middle of probably the biggest infrastructure rebuild in the history of this country, or at least since the 1930s. And that's where a lot of the government deficit spending is going, is to rebuild the industrial infrastructure. That's supportive of industrial properties. If the top decile of households by income account for 40% of consumer spending, and they just experienced a massive increase in wealth, as long as those top households continue their consumption patterns, it'll be supportive for distribution facilities and industrial properties that support consumption. But there again, I say, there could be some impact from falling office values or other that could impact their spending. So, federal deficit spending and spending by the wealthiest consumers has been very supportive of industrial projects. And as long as it continues, then industrial continues to be healthy. If things change, all bets are off.
Okay, thank you, Gerald. Going back to residential here, Ron is asking, do you see residential REOs increasing this year?
I don't, not significantly, at least not owner-occupied properties. Folks are locked in at their 2 3/4 mortgages. They don't have a reason to move. And I think one of the things that economists have missed is the spending boom, that refinancing, it's been very supportive for GDP. And so these folks, with their low mortgage rates locked in for a long period of time, there's no reason, unless there's a significant, life issue, death, divorce or loss of job. I don't see that there's that default coming. What we had in 2007, 2008 was folks who had financed their residential mortgages at a low rate, had to refinance in a higher rate environment in 2007, 2008. That's where the REOs came. They couldn't afford the higher. We don't have that problem in residential this time. Everybody's locked in. But that problem exists in commercial real estate and in corporate debt. They refinanced about 3 years ago at historically low rates. And so the same thing that residential folks experienced in 2007, 2008, the commercial folks are experiencing now and will over the next few years. And so that's why I see echoes of of the past in the present, and we're going to just have to wait and see how the refinancing issue works out in commercial real estate. But Fannie and Freddie are in great shape. They got the backing of the government. Banks aren't cutting back on residential lending because Fannie and Freddie, we know, have government backing. So I don't see any, I don't see a chance that we're going to see anything of the REOs that we did back in 07, 08.
Okay, thank you for that. You shared some great information with us today, Gerald. Is there anything else that you want to share today?
I think that the top thing that I would say is a good realtor who embraces their fiduciary responsibility can save you a lot of money. And so find a realtor who really understands their fiduciary responsibility, and in these turbulent times, they're gonna help you out and protect your interests, which I think is what people want. And the only other thing I would say is don't stretch financially to purchase a house. Now is not the time to be brave and speculative. Now is the time to be cautious and conserve your cash.
Well, one more great question that just came in that I'd like to ask you, Gerald, is in relation to the 55 and up communities. Bernie says that they have a lot of friends and relatives that are interested in 55 and up communities. Do you see the market increasing in the Houston area in those types of communities?
I've seen some or read. I've read of some interesting options for 55 plus communities using different types of homes, different styles of construction for different price ranges. I think Houston I think that will continue. And so, I've been reading about that, for us Gen Xers, are going to potentially be looking for those types of communities here in the very near future. And so I think it's a good market. I think it'll continue in Houston. And I know you've got some fantastic developers of 55 plus communities in Houston that know how to do them right. And that'll make them attractive for people. So just keep following those developers in Houston that do the 55 plus, and I think you'll see some good product for sale.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Gerald. And we just got a comment that came in from Jennifer Wilbur saying this is great information, and I completely agree. We always appreciate when you can join us and share your knowledge and your insight into the market, Gerald.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure being with you today.
Thank you so much. Well, that is it for HAR Community Conversations. We will be back next month, so be sure to tune in. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.